Hello and welcome to the Martial Arts Teaching Tactics Podcast. I'm Chris Kent, and I'm joining Chris Bean. Mr. Bean?
Hello, sir.
Today we're going to be talking about your class schedule. We're going to cover topics such as separating your classes, building the class schedule, and then if you have to, which you probably will inevitably, making changes to that schedule. So, Mr. Bean, let's dive in and can you kind of discuss, first off, let me preface this as well. You're the one who builds and creates and manages the schedule for our studio. So you have a lot of hands-on experience with this. And at my studio, the other location, I basically just took your schedule and applied it to me. So you are the authority on class schedules, at least as it applies to our martial arts studio. So can you kind of walk us through your process and the way that you work on some of that stuff?
Yes, sir. So separating your classes, you can separate your classes based on age, rank, class size, but have some sort of key starting point to developing your schedule. Like figure out how many belt groups can you manage at a given time. Is there a natural separation in your ranks? What ages do you want separate from other ages, and how many ages or what ages can be all thrown and kind of lumped together? These can all be factors that will help you define your classes and kind of help you set up or have the groundwork to setting up your class schedule. For us, we have a 3 and 4 year old program. We have a 5 and 6 year old program. Then we have a 7 and up program. So the 3 and 4 year old classes, that's one class. The 5 and 6 year old, that's another class. And the 7 and up program, we have that separated into 4 belt groups. So we have a beginners class that has 4 belt ranks. We have an intermediate class that again has 4 belt ranks. We have an advanced class that has 4 belt ranks. Then we have a black belt class. For us, having 4 belt ranks in class at a given time for that 7 and up program is really about the sweet point for us. We have 4 belt ranks on the floor. We have a team leader with each of those belt ranks, and then some assistant team leaders or some assistant team members that will help and facilitate the classes. So building your class schedule.
Can I interject quickly about separating your class?
Yes, sir.
As you talked about, we have the 4 different classes, or the 3 different sections of classes, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and up. This is pertinent, especially at my point in time with the other location we're running. I don't have as many students as we have here, but I'm starting to get to the point where I have lots of different belt ranks. And so I foresee in the future, I'm going to have to set up my classes or separate my classes differently than we would here, because it wouldn't make sense to have a whole entirely long, 45-minute long class for 2 people. At least not at this point in time, the way things are set up with the way we're doing it. So as we talked about, or we'll talk about a little bit later, changing your class schedule and making changes to the class schedule that have to come with time, but it just depends on how many people you have, not only in the class, but how many people you have to help with the class too. Because if you have, it's just a white belt class, but there's 50 of them, well, maybe you have to separate that white belt class into a separate, 7 to 4, or however it's done. You guys separate that depending on what it is. So, we talked about the ones that work for us, but it just depends on your capacity and the ability to handle that capacity as well too. So again, I wanted to bring it up because it's something I'm dealing with right now, and it's kind of ties into the separation of the classes.
Yeah, and even for us, back in the day when we were starting out, we had a lower belt group class and an upper belt group class. We took the belt groups that we had and we just split it right in half. And if you were green belt and below, for example, you were all in one class. And if you were green with a white belt on up, you were in the other class. We had 2 classes just because that's the amount of staff that we had at the time, and that's the amount of students we had at the time. Sure, that meant that there were some people that were sitting and waiting for it to be their turn just because there wasn't a lot of staff, back in the day. So it was a different process. As we grew students, we grew a little bit larger staff, and so that helps to facilitate the type of class structure that we have now. And like Mash Kent said, depending on how big your school is, both in students but also in your team members, you may have to do things a little bit differently. instead of by how many belt groups you have in class, maybe you divide up only or solely by age, and you have all of the 5 and 6 year olds in one class, no matter what belt they are, and you have all the 7 through 10 year olds in another class, no matter what belt they are, because that works better for you. The process, the different tools that we're going to talk about are where we are at in this given time, and the school that we're at. Again, with the amount of students we have, the amount of staff we have, this is the way that our process runs. Of course, you can take these ideas and you might have to tweak them depending on your school and how it fits and interacts with your needs. This is just a guide, a reference that we're using at this given time. Setting up the order of your classes may seem like a trivial task, but it is an important part of your school's ecosystem. The way you schedule your classes will dictate the flow of the evening for your team and also for your clients, your students. If you have your classes scheduled for times that don't flow very well or work in your clients' schedules, then they're going to be unhappy. They're not going to be able to make it to those classes. If your schedule is always changing and updating and being revised, then your students won't know when and what time to show up and what class they're going to be in, and it's going to be a mess. So try to dial in the best you can before you set this and give this out to your clients, because if you have a rough draft and you say, yeah, okay, here's the schedule we're going to do for this week, and it changes the next week and the next week, that is going to be really tough for your students to try to figure out what's going on or to get an updated schedule every week. Have a schedule that sticks at least for a belt cycle, right? You don't want to interchange or change up your schedule in the middle of a belt cycle. Have it stick for at least a little bit of time. Deal with some issues until they are ready, and you can change it out the next belt cycle. If there's a scheduling conflict for you or for a team member, or you thought that having a 5-minute window in class, in between classes was going to be excellent, and actually it is not. Just eat it, save it, wait till the end of that belt testing cycle, and then change your schedule. That will be very important for your clients to know what's going on and when to show up and when to be ready for class. It will make that a lot easier for them.
Not to mention the consistency is important for you as a teacher, but for them as students. Having that consistent schedule that doesn't change very often is going to be important as they come to your classes. And then, we talked about it already before, but you are going to have a trial and error period. So it might change a handful of times before you find one that's really good. But once you find one that works, stick with it as long as you can. And then eventually have to make, adjustments based on your staff or your student capacity, how many there are. But if you find something that works, go with it and run with it as long as you can and be consistent with that schedule.
Yeah, of course you want to take a look at when you start your classes and how many classes can you fit in a given day, what are those classes going to be, and when are those classes going to end, because your starting point is really going to be important, because if the students aren't out of school yet or out of work yet, they're not going to be able to make it to those classes. And if you have young students trying to show up for class at 9 o'clock at night, that's not going to work very well for their parents. They're not going to want them to be up and active, running around in your classes at 9 o'clock at night when they should be going to bed. So that will be kind of a key factor that when you place those younger students into your schedule. And of course, like I said, you want to try to make sure that you can accommodate as many different client schedules as you can inside of your own schedule, because of course that's going to be the best, because otherwise you are limiting your student base, because you have your classes at times that don't work for 5 and 6 year olds, or it doesn't work for 3 and 4 year olds. If that happens, then you will need to change something so that you can have clients and have students in those classes.
Speaking of starting and end times, sometimes whether you have a lot of people in the class or depending on the situation as far as your staffing goes, you might need an extra window in between, meaning all of our classes basically run back to back to back to back to back. Here at this location where we have more staff and we have an office person and we have the ability to have people cover all those things, but it might just be you. It might just be you running the floor. You might be handling new clients and talking to people after and before class and dealing with issues. So you might want a window of time in between rather than starting right after the class ends, give yourself 15 minutes so you can say goodbye and address questions that people have from the class that just ended, and you can greet and chat with the people that are coming to their class, and kind of helps you give that extra level of connection, which you wouldn't have time for if you went from back to back. And then, if we're being honest, you'd probably be starting late anyways, dealing with issues between those two back-to-back classes if you don't have the staff available to facilitate those things. We talked before about, having staff members with responsibilities in between classes. They get the next class in, they get it lined up, they make sure everyone's ready to go. That way, as soon as you finish your class, you as head instructor can walk over, boom, start the next class. But when it's just you doing all of that stuff, you might need a little bit extra time. So, like you said, factoring and thinking about the start and end times is important. And if you don't need extra time in between to deal with some of the things, then do it back to back, and then run your classes, get as many classes done as you can in a night, and get them done as quick as you can in a night. But if you need extra time, then allow for that extra time. You might end up with an extra hour at the end of the night. Instead of being there until 8 o'clock, you're there until 9 o'clock. Well, this is why you need to build and set up that schedule so you know what it's going to be like, but then you can also consider and factor in all those variables before the night starts.
Yeah, and another important piece of this is how long are your classes? If you have, an hour and a half class, or you have a 45 or 30, those are all different things that, of course, you'll have to check in and kind of dial in as you're setting up your schedule. As a guide, what we do for us, we have our 3 and 4-year-olds and our 5 and 6-year-olds, their class is only a half an hour. Because even though as we're in the classes and we're changing up the drills and the activities that they're doing about every 5 or so minutes just to keep their attention, 30 minutes, that's about the end for them. Especially the 3 and 4-year-olds, 30 minutes to try to keep their attention and get them to do, the focus or the teamwork or whatever the lesson is for the week. That's tough. And then 5 and 6, they're starting to get a little bit better with that, but we still keep even 5 and 6-year-olds at 30 minutes just so we can make sure they're able to pay attention and they're able to get the information out of the class and they're not checking out halfway in. Now, for all of our 7 and up-year-old classes, those are 45-minute classes. At the intermediate level, so intermediate and advanced, we have a extra program that the students can be selected to be a part of that adds 15 minutes to their class, so that's an hour-long class. And the black belt classes are an hour because, well, quite frankly, at black belt level, there's a lot of information to cover. And at that position for them, both they are mature enough, old enough physically, and mature enough with the material. They kind of know what's going on and how the martial arts kind of works at that level. So an hour for them doesn't seem like too much. In fact, there are some days, and maybe you would agree, that an hour and a half maybe would be sometimes beneficial for black belts.
Sometimes I wish I had more time.
Yes, right.
Because of the volume of content they have to cover, as we've talked about before. You got to have, if you're not practicing the old stuff with the new stuff, then you're going to lose it and it's going to degrade. So, not to mention we're working on a whole new black belt curriculum, but we're also reviewing and covering the old stuff that they practiced up until this point. So, yes, an hour I think is a good time for them. They can handle it no problem. We're able to switch things up enough that it's not repetitive or boring. And there are days when even I wish it was longer.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, taking a look at those things and seeing across your ages, across your belt groups, how long can those students handle? Of course, as you're doing this, you want to play to about the median level student. Of course, you'll have, 5 and 6-year-olds that can probably handle 45 minutes in class, and you'll have 5 and 6-year-olds that maybe half an hour is even too long. So you have to kind of play to the middle to kind of get the best of both worlds for that. But as a standard, what we do is 3 and 4-year-olds, 5 and 6-year-olds, half an hour. And then 7 and up, they'll get 45 minutes unless they're in the extra program. We call it the leadership program. Then they get 15 minutes extra, so they get a full hour, and then black belts is an hour. But having that, would be one of the first things that you'll need to do is figure out how long are your classes? How long do they need to be? And then, like Master Kent was saying, do you need 5 or 10 or 15-minute windows in between your classes just to get things set up or to deal with new students as they come in or as they exit? to answer questions. All of those things will be factored in. Of course, that will be what will really dictate when you start or when you end your night. And so as you're building your program, as you're building your class schedule, make sure those things are there. You're keeping an eye on that, because that really greatly will kind of help to set you off on the right foot. You don't want to have something figured out and like, okay, great, this is what we're going to do, and have all the classes an hour long, and then you get to your first 3 and 4-year-old class that's an hour long, and man, I feel sorry for you. An hour with 3 and 4-year-olds, that's going to be a tough day, especially if you have that for, however many times through the night or whatever. Just have those things in check and understood as you're building this schedule for you. Another thing, of course, you want to look at is how many days per week do you want your students to come to class?
I thought of this earlier, didn't say it, but of course this looks different for every person. As we've been talking, we have our program. I would say 97% of our program is kids, is children. So of course we want to have it outside of school hours. So they're training at night. They finish school. They either come right from school or they go home for a little bit and they do some homework or they have other activities, whatever it is. Our main block of classes is at night. You, as an individual, decide what's best for your program. You might be working with adults. You might be working with college students or, kids too as well. And you might have that availability during the day that people can come to your class. So it just depends on not only knowing those age groups and separating them, but like you said, finding what works best for them. For us, it's night because we work with mostly those children in the younger age. But if you have adults and you have people that can come before their job or, come during the day or whatever it is, then block that time out for those schedules. And maybe even you have some classes in the morning and some classes at night to accommodate for more people and be able to allow for more people to come in and train in your arts. And that's something you have to decide for yourself. Like, we personally have a morning class on Monday and Fridays for adults that can make it to that class, whether it's before their job or, they're homeschooled or whatever it is. They can come to those classes and be a part of that. But it doesn't make sense for us to do that throughout the whole week because we don't have enough of those to have day classes throughout the whole week. So again, just decide what works best for you, depending on your style and depending on the target, not even the target audience, but the people that you have coming to you. If there's a demand for it, then you can open up to that. But again, that's something you have to decide for you because I know a lot of people also don't do this full time. Some of the people have different jobs and they have other things going on and they don't have the capacity to do that, whether you need to hire for it or readjust your schedule in your life. But again, you can make it work and just decide, really it's your business. It's your opportunity. You can do as you want with it and just kind of listen to the voice of the people and try to accommodate that. That way you can have more clients come in at different times and do what's best for them. Sorry to cut you off there, but I was thinking that.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit later about scheduling or making changes to your schedule. But each time you put out a new schedule, there will be a percentage of people that come to, hey, listen, this time doesn't work for me. I can't, we have soccer this day and this time. What can we do? So having some options for those people will definitely be important. And listening to that feedback and trying to keep that in mind as you make the next iteration of your schedule will be important as well. Now, as you're setting up your class schedule, of course, you want to keep an eye of how many days a week do you want or would you like your students to come to class? Do you offer a open mat time that your students can just come in and practice and you're there to kind of facilitate, ask questions or to answer questions if needed, and otherwise they're just there practicing? When do you offer private lessons? Do you offer private lessons, or is that on a separate night? Do you do that, each day of the week? These will all be, again, questions that you'll have to have answers to, or at least have an idea of what you would like as you're building your class schedule. What we do is we offer classes 4 days a week. We have the students come 2 times per week. So, for example, we have Mondays and Wednesdays that are grouped together, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays that are grouped together. So meaning if I come on Monday, my next class is going to be Wednesday. If Master Kent comes on Tuesday, his next class is going to be Thursday.
And you also mean the class times are the same. So on Monday, Wednesday, it's the same time. Tuesday, Thursday is the same time.
It's the same time, right. And along with that, so for us, Monday and Tuesday, we teach the same information. So the beginner's class, of course, they're at different times, but the beginner's class on Monday and Tuesday, they learn the exact same information. They read the lesson plan is the exact same for Monday and Tuesday. Then on the B day of the week, the second half of the week, Wednesday and Thursday, those classes are the exact same. So I have an A day class and I have a B day class as my lesson plan goes. And so if it's a Monday or Tuesday, I'm teaching A day. If it's a Wednesday or a Thursday, I teach B day. And that means, again, we have classes 4 days a week, which means Friday is the day that we have set aside for makeup lessons, for private lessons, for one-on-one time. So the students would schedule times of, if they are on vacation, if they're sick, if they can't make it in for class, we have a full night available for one-on-one lessons. And for that night, we have all of our staff is here. They sign up for different time slots and they get assigned an instructor, say, hey, listen, I want to work on this, and they get to recover and review that information that they missed or they need extra help on. We have a full day set aside for that. Now, of course, the way that you have your class schedule is going to be different perhaps, but that's what we do. That's what we found has worked best for us. Now, as far as the scheduling goes, for 3 and 4-year-olds, really you want to get them fresh out of school, because as 3 and 4-year-olds move into the night, they're going to be less and less willing to listen and do what you ask them to do. So for Monday and Wednesday, actually for each day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the 3 and 4-year-old class is the first class of the night. So the first class of the night, no matter what, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the first class that we have is a 3 and 4-year-old class. And on Monday, Wednesday, it is at 3:30. And on Tuesday, Thursday, it starts at 4. So they differ by half an hour just to accommodate extra, depending on where they live, the time they get off the bus. But that's the first class of the night. Again, just because you want to get them fresh out of school before they get home and they kind of unwind and start to tune out. Right? You want to get them fresh out of school. And then on Monday, Wednesday, we're going to break down what we do. Monday, Wednesday, 3 and 4-year-old class. Then we move to a 5 and 6-year-old class. Then it's beginner, intermediate, advanced, black belts in a pretty linear progress all the way through, right? So 3 and 4-year-olds, 5 and 6, beginner, intermediate, advanced, black belts. On Monday, Wednesday, that's what our class schedule is. Now, having a opposing schedule on the opposite day allows for bigger availability for the clients, right? So if you only offer the beginners class, no matter what day a week at the same time, that may be troubling for your clients. So what we did was we kind of flipped our schedule for the other day. So Monday, Wednesday, again, is the little guys, the next side, the next age, and the beginner, intermediate, advanced, right on to black belt. On the next day of the week, again, we start with the 3 and 4-year-olds to get them fresh out of school. Then we do advanced. Then we do 5 and 6, so they're not too far into the night. Then it's beginner, intermediate, and then black belts again. And having those opposing times means that, on Monday and Wednesday, this class is at 4:30. On Tuesday, Thursday, if that 4:30 time doesn't work for you, well, it's at 6 o'clock. And so having that opposing time schedules will help to accommodate more people's schedules, because maybe that 4 o'clock time doesn't work for them because mom and dad isn't home for work yet. They can't physically get them to your school to teach them, for you to teach them class. So offering a different day at a later time or an earlier time or depending on what class it is will help to accommodate more people's schedule. And that, of course, will be something you want to keep in your mind as you're building your class schedule.
It gives you more options to work around. Just think about it in terms of, you got to go to the doctor. Well, if the doctor's only able to see you at this time, well, you need to go to the doctor, so you're going to have to rearrange something else in your life to make that work. So having more options for us makes it easier for them to be able to come to the class and not have to completely change what they're doing already or, mix around their schedules too much. It makes it more available to them and like you said, more possible for them to come and train come to our school to train.
Yeah, and we also offer each of our classes we offer on Monday, Wednesday, or on Tuesday, Thursday. There's not, with the exception of black belts, and I'll talk about that caveat in just a minute. We offer beginners classes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Tuesday and Thursday. Each one of our classes you can come to either Monday, Wednesday time or Tuesday, Thursday time. If it doesn't work on Monday, Wednesday, maybe it works on Tuesday, Thursday. And we even have some clients that do, let's say, a Monday class and a Thursday class. As long as they do an A day class and a B day class within that week, they're getting the information that is important for them to get for their level. They're not missing anything. So that gives even more opportunities for your students, your clients, to come to your classes. Now, for black belts, we have a rather large number of first degree black belts, the first level of black belt. And we have them all in one class. And what do we have, 25?
Probably 25, if not close to 30.
Right. So we have all of them all in one class. Which is actually a pretty big class. But they're all in one class, and they are only on Monday and Wednesdays. And then the rest of the black belts, so second degree and third degree, I guess not the rest of the black belts, but the second degrees and the third degrees, the next two levels of black belt, they're on Tuesday and Thursday. We did that because, with 25 to 30 first degrees in one class, that's a lot. We originally had them all at one time, and it was difficult for us to manage teaching one level of information for this group and another level for this group, and that became a little bit tough, especially as the black belt levels or the numbers of black belts grew and grew. So we separated them. Do we find that offers scheduling conflicts for our students? Yes. From time to time, maybe they have church on Wednesday night, so they can't make Wednesdays. That gives us an opportunity to overcome that by having private lessons. So because we have that Friday all set for private lessons all night, if they can't make it to class on that Wednesday or whatever other day during the week, then we have a Friday set aside for them to do a one-on-one lesson to get caught up on whatever that material was. And that offers a huge benefit for us, because that means that we're not secluding people that can't make it because of whatever is going on in their life. Maybe they started football or soccer or whatever. If that was conflict with the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday class schedules, oftentimes Friday they have that they can come in to make up those classes. And from time to time during sports seasons, whatever sports season it happens to be in at that time, those students come to those private lessons. And for private lessons on that day, we way back, we used to have them on Saturdays. And we would have a beginners, if you're in the beginners class, if you're this belt to this belt, come at this time and we'll get you caught up on the material for the week. If you're in the intermediate and so on, all on Saturday. And we would start at, 7 o'clock and we would finish at noon, which is fine. Totally okay. But as you, I'm sure, know, it is nice to have 2 days off and not have to go to the school to teach classes, especially on a Saturday. Every Saturday from 7 to noon, you're there teaching classes instead of doing whatever else you want to do, being with your family, mowing the lawn, doing grocery shopping, whatever it is that you have to get done for the weekend, because you only have 2 days to get that stuff done. You're here teaching because you have to, because that's how your schedule is built. So speaking from somebody who's done that and did that for a number of years, now having largely Saturdays off is wonderful. It is great to have 2 days off at the end of the week, just like a quote-unquote normal person. And then go back to work on Monday, work until Friday. Okay, great, I get 2 days off again. Now, sometimes, you have black belt tests that are on Saturdays. Sometimes you have seminars that are on Saturdays. Sure, every once in a while, those are fine. But to do it every single week will burn out your team, right? Not having that those 2 days off, because by the time they get out of here on Saturday at 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock, by the time they actually leave, and the day is almost over, right? So if you can have that, if you can work that into your schedule to have a Friday night that you take care of those lessons, will be helpful. Now, I talked about too that we had it, if they're in the beginners class, you did this, this one time. The problem with that is that doesn't work for everybody's schedule still. And so for our Friday night private lessons, we have the opportunity for them to sign up for time slots. So in our app, they can go to it and say, okay, I need a lesson, and we have them blocked out for 15-minute increments through the whole night, and there's 4 or 5 time slots per time slot. So 4 or 5, how would I say that? 4 or 5 lessons that can happen at the same time, because that's how many staff members we have. 15-minute increments all the way through the night, so we can have like 45 different lessons. We can accommodate 45 different students one-on-one for 15-minute increments in a very short time. And that is super beneficial, again, to making sure that they can come in and they can fit your classes into their schedule. That also helps to reduce the amount of people who quit because they start some other sport, right? If they start soccer or football, man, my coach wants us to be there every day of the week. Whatever, I have to quit now because I can't. Okay, well, how about Fridays? Fridays at 7 o'clock. Does that work for you? Oh, yeah, I can come in for 15 minutes on Friday at 7 o'clock. Yeah, sure. Okay, then let's make a private lesson for Johnny, on Friday, and we'll get him caught up. That way he's not missing anything in class. Still gets to do football and he gets to do karate. How's that sound? Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, let's do that. Great. And you can offer those private lessons at an extra charge or have that built into your tuition price. We have it built into our tuition price, but again, back in the day, we paid for those. Those were $10 for 15-minute lesson. So each time you did a private lesson, a one-on-one lesson, it was $10. Then we kind of built that into our tuition. Now, if they come to a private lesson, it's just a part of the program, right? Which is an extra benefit that you get to offer your clients at seemingly no extra charge because they're already paying that price anyways. Just some food for thought there. Now, making changes to your class schedule. We talked about this briefly already, but from time to time, you will have to make or alter your class schedule. The best times to do that is after a grading cycle, right? So belt testing happens and then the new schedule takes effect. So of course, you want to build that up or let your clients know, let the students know, hey, listen, guys, in 2 weeks, here's the new, or in a month, here's a new class schedule. It's not going to happen for a month, right? And you have it in bold letters on the top typed in there so they know when it's going to take effect. And then, of course, you'll have to tell them 18 times too because they'll need that reminder. But listen, it's not going to happen until after belt testing, after the graduation, after everybody gets a new belt. Then we're going to start this new schedule. Now, Master Kent talked already a little bit about this, but we offer classes for a lot of students, a lot of kids, a lot of children. So maybe, and we do this in the summertime. You open up daytime classes, right? So you have 15 slots available for each of your classes in the daytime, in the morning time that your students can come to. And what that'll do is that'll offer or open up extra times for them, different times for them to come to class, and potentially it would free up their evening, which if you have half of your students come in the morning and then half of your students come at nighttime, that may mean that your classes are a little bit easier because they're not as overwhelming. They're not as big because you get to separate them out a little bit. You're still teaching all the students that you normally teach. You're just teaching half of them in the morning time and half of them in the evening time. Now, if you haven't done summer classes or morning classes or early classes like that previously, try it out for a summer, see how it goes. If you like it, great, do it. If you don't, then don't. Right? It just as an extra option for you, something different to try. We offer that in the summer months because the clients say that it's beneficial for them to have their evenings open. So if they can come to a morning time, we have select spots available for those morning times. That way we know how much staffing that we're going to need for those. But that helps to divide up the classes in the summer. It makes them a little bit easier to teach because there's less people there at one time. They get a little bit more one-on-one attention. And for however many of them sign up for those early times, it frees up their evening so they can be with their family. They have more family time they can spend together because of the way that you separate and changed your program. And for us, again, we have that 3-month grading cycle. So the 3-month grading cycle, we happen to have one right in summer. So for all the summer months, they're in one grading cycle. And then towards the end of summer, at the end of summer, that grading cycle ends, kids go back to school, we start our next grading cycle, which then means our class schedule can change, and we take those morning time or those early classes down because kids are back in school. They can't make it to those times anymore. Got it? Okay. Now you'll just go back to night class. Again, not something that you have to do, but potentially would be beneficial for your clients to have that extra or that different time that they can come to class. And it sometimes is nice in the summertime when it's really warm to have half as many people on your floor training and doing classes than normally. While you're not missing anybody because they're just coming at different times, the class loads are a little bit easier, a little bit lighter because they're separated a little bit more. And so developing and laying out your schedule, your class schedule, will be important. Now, one part that we haven't talked about is how do your students see this, right? Where do they find this at? Well, for us, we have a physical paper that we can hand people. Also, we have it on an app. So all of our students have access to our app. Right in there on the front page of the app, boom, is the class schedule. Now, for our class schedule, we have it color-coded. So, the 3 and 4-year-old class is teal, and the 5 and 6-year-old class is pink, and that way they can look at it and say, okay, I'm a 7 and up, and beginners, I am tan. Okay, where's all the tan colors at? Okay, those are my class times. Just to make it a little bit easier for your clients to look at, kind of at a glance, and know when and where and what time they need to show up for class. Having that color coding system is not necessary, but will help to perhaps make interacting with your schedule a little bit easier, just because they can do it at a glance. They're not looking, necessarily at the words. They just know, okay, I'm a green color. Where's the greens at? Okay, I can come at this time on Monday, Wednesday, or this time at Tuesday, Thursday. Okay, well, yep, this one works for me. And they go to that class. And of course, that'll be beneficial for when you have new students come in. You can say, okay, hey, listen, you're going to be in the beginners class. It's going to be this time. You circle it on the page. You hand it to them, and they can take that home with them. They put it on the refrigerator. They know what time their karate classes are. Now, of course, you can have it built in where they, get a reminder before their class or a couple days before, something like that. Of course, absolutely, you can do that. But sometimes people really like having that physical piece of paper that they can hang on their fridge. Just people are old school sometimes like that. You anything to add to that, sir? Pretty well covered all the scheduling, your classes ins and outs.
Right, and as with everything, it's different for everybody. So you have to figure out what works. You're gonna have to figure out what works best for you and decide what you want to do. But these are just some tips and guidelines as far as how we operate things, and hopefully it can help someone else. As always, if there's any thoughts, comments, concerns, or questions, you can find us online on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, Instagram. All those places you can find us at MA Teaching Tactics, MA for Martial Arts Teaching Tactics. Again, that is MA Teaching Tactics online. Anything else to add, Mr. Bean?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit last week too, but our app that we're using to host and put this podcast out to everybody is showing some listeners from across the world, actually. And so if you could put up on one of those social media outlets where you're listening from, and maybe some benefits that you've gotten out of our podcast, would be great to hear from you, especially again from the interesting and wildly vast different places that you're listening to, or at least that the app is showing that you're listening to around the globe. It'd be great to hear from you.
Yes, sir. Until next time, I'm Chris Kent.
And I'm Chris Bean.